Hi, and welcome back to Anxiously Capable. If you are new here, thank you for tuning in. This is the podcast where we talk about all things anxiety, OCD, and intrusive thoughts, and how to live a really fulfilled life alongside anxiety and OCD. I'm Jess. I'm a qualified therapist based in the UK, and I specialise in working with anxiety and OCD. And I also have my own experience with anxiety and OCD. So these episodes are never just coming from a point of, I've trained in this, I'm talking from a textbook. No, we've got like real life experience thrown into the mix here. But yeah, let's get into today's episode. And what I thought we'd speak about today is the three most common mistakes I see people making with anxiety and OCD recovery. And when I say common mistakes, I'm basically meaning the things that are preventing you from recovering. So, when you've got that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything I can, I'm putting all this work in, I'm trying so hard, and I don't feel like anything's changing. I feel like I'm still stuck, I feel like I'm still constantly anxious, I'm still getting tripped up by safety behaviors, I'm still doing compulsions, I'm really struggling, even though I'm putting all this work in. What we're going to talk about are the three things that are likely keeping you in that place. And I want you to know that there's no judgment with this. Like, these mistakes are super common. These are the things that I often point out to clients very gently, let me add, but point out very gently that they're doing these things and that it's going to be making their recovery a little bit harder, let's say. So yeah, these things are almost like a rite of passage. Everybody is going to do them. No shame, no judgment. Hell, I've done these. I've done these a lot. I was probably stuck doing these for years because basically, to tell you a little bit about my anxiety, if you are new here, my anxiety really started in like 2017, 2018. At that point, I wasn't training as a therapist. No, I hadn't started. So I was doing these things without any knowledge, without any therapy. So like I know what it's like. I know it's hard, but I'm going to try and gently point these out to you in this episode. And you might come away and you might think, nope, I'm not doing them. I'm not doing them. And then you might start to slowly notice them in your life. And that is okay. Like, just please know that that is okay. If you take anything away from this, these things are not to shame you, they're not to judge you. They're just to gently point out a couple of things that you might not notice that you're doing yourself that are keeping you stuck in anxiety, in worry, in OCD. So, let's get into it. Common mistake number one is seeking reassurance. And what I mean by this is Googling your symptoms, checking your feelings with others, checking that you're okay, checking that they're okay, checking that you haven't done anything wrong, searching up on Reddit, looking up your intrusive thoughts on Reddit, Googling, am I a bad person for thinking this? What does this thought mean about me? Is this a symptom of anxiety? You know what I mean? Those kind of questions that anxiety and OCD really throw at us that make us think, right, I'm going to ask someone about this. I'm going to search this up. I'm going to go to Reddit. I'm going to get that reassurance that I need. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get some form of reassurance. The other one time, it's actually going to make it immediately worse. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to get some form of reassurance. You're going to get that little moment where you go, oh, okay, that's fine. That's okay. I'm okay. They're okay. I've checked this. I've Googled this, and this is normal. And basically, what you've got is a little bit of short term relief. And short term relief with anxiety and OCD almost becomes addictive. So you get that short term relief, and those feelings go. That anxiety, that worry, the compulsion, whatever it is, it goes and then it comes back. And the point is, it's always going to come back because that short term relief is almost like a plaster on these things. You're getting that little bit of, okay, I'm okay. This is fine. I can do with this. I've Googled, I've looked it up, I've got the feeling that I needed. And because short term relief is quite addictive, next time it comes around, next time those feelings that need to do the compulsion, the anxiety, the OCD, next time it flares up, you need to seek that short term relief even more. Your mind is going to go, I need that. I need to Google. I need to seek reassurance. I need that relief even more intensely than you needed it before. So it becomes a cycle. You get really, really caught in it. You get caught up seeking the reassurance, short term relief, and then the longer term impact on that is that next time these feelings come up, next time you feel like this, you need to repeat that cycle all over again. And it gets more and more intense the more you repeat it. If you want to learn a little bit more about the cycle of anxiety, I do have a free masterclass on this. I don't want to go too much into it in this episode because it's huge, like it really is. So I have a free masterclass on this. It's about, I think it's just short of an hour. I will link it in the description or the show notes, whatever platform you're on. I will link it below, and you can sign up for that. It's free. It's just like an email sign up. But I'll pop that below for you if you want to learn a little bit more about this. So, if reassurance seeking is keeping you stuck in anxiety, in OCD, it's keeping you stuck in these behaviors, what do you actually do to stop it? And I don't think you're going to like this because it's really, really simple in theory, difficult in practice, which is like the case with a lot of these things. But basically, you have to stop seeking that reassurance. I know, I know. It's a really daunting idea. It's a really terrifying idea. I get it. I really do. But the more that you can sit with that anxiety, that uncertainty, the more you can not follow that path of, I need that short term relief, the better that's going to be for your anxiety, for your mental health, for your OCD. And this is what I mean by, in theory, it's easy. In practice, it's a bit harder because you might listen to this and you might think, oh, yeah, I can stop doing that. That's fine. I'll delete Reddit. Next time you get an intrusive thought, next time you get an anxious what if thought, your mind is instantly going to go, okay, I need to search this. I need to Google this. And we have to break that pattern. We have to break that cycle from happening. So, the thing to remember with that is this is about progress, not perfection. You will not be able to resist these things. You will not be able to stop Googling, stop seeking the reassurance, stop looking on Reddit, stop asking other people around you if you're okay. You won't be able to stop doing that overnight. If this has become a really intense behavior for you, you won't be able to stop doing it quite that easily. So, progress, not perfection. The more you can resist doing these things, the better that's going to be for you long term. But it's not about doing it every single time. You will make mistakes, but the more that you can sit with that anxiety, the more you can resist seeking that reassurance, the better that is going to be for you long term. You will continue making this mistake after this episode. I do this occasionally now. And one thing that's really helpful is I actually had a conversation with my partner about this and told him that if he noticed I was doing this, to not give me that reassurance and externalizing that, getting that other person that will basically turn around to me in them moments and say, you're seeking reassurance, and call me out for it in a really gentle way. Like, he in no way does it in an aggressive way or a harsh way. He's basically just mindfully pointing it out to me when I'm not noticing it. That can be really helpful. So if you notice that reassurance seeking, that you naturally try and get that from somebody else, if it feels comfortable, if it feels okay, one thing that you can do is ask them to point it out. And you might turn around and be like, in those moments, you might be like, yeah, I am reassurance seeking, but I'm going to keep reassurance seeking, but at least you're aware of it. Someone has pointed it out, someone has clocked it, and it gives you that time to make the choice as to whether you want to continue seeking that reassurance from them or whether you want to try resisting at that point. So you will make mistakes with this, but it's just a matter of really trying to notice these things to begin with, trying to make this more of a conscious choice than an automatic thing that you do. So, mistake number 3 is avoiding triggers. And this comes back to that short term relief, long term impact again. Imagine that you're going to an event, you're going to a social event, and you're starting to feel anxious. You may be getting ready. You're going out for a meal with your friends. You're getting ready and you're starting to stress. You're starting to worry. You're starting to feel like you can't cope with it. So you call off that situation. You message your friend, you text them, you say, sorry, I'm ill. I'm not coming. I've had this emergency come up. I can't make it anymore. Short term relief, long term impact. Next time that you're in one of those situations, those anxious feelings are going to feel even more intense than they did that other time. And I'm sure you can kind of see the pattern here of how that then makes your anxiety feel worse. It's because in that moment when you're getting that short term relief, you're not experiencing that anxiety, you're just avoiding it. You're finding a way to avoid it. So it's just going to stay there. It's just going to wait until the next time you feel like that again, until the next time it can rear its head and go, I'm still here. Listen to me. I don't want you to go there. And it's that pattern. It's that short term relief, long term impact again. Essentially, what avoidance is, whether it's in the form of avoiding triggers, it's a quick fix. Like skipping that meeting or skipping that social situation, it reinforces the anxiety, it reinforces the fear, and it reinforces the idea that you can't cope with that. That the only way you can cope with that is by avoiding it. I'm going to expand on that a little bit more because I know that's quite a difficult thing to consider and to kind of get your head around at times. But essentially, every time we avoid a trigger, we teach our brain, we teach our anxiety that that situation is dangerous and that we need to avoid it. So the more you avoid something, the more you then need to avoid it further down the line, next time it comes up. Over time, what this does is it shrinks your comfort zone. It shrinks what you can cope with, what it feels you can cope with, or what you can handle, and it makes everyday life more daunting. The first episode I did on this podcast, I spoke a little bit more about this. But what you can try and do in these situations is by making the anxious choice, by not avoiding those things, by choosing to do the thing that is triggering your anxiety, you can slowly build up this comfort zone again. You can slowly begin exposing yourself to these situations that trigger your anxiety, really gradually, really small. We're not talking throwing yourself into some god awful, terrifying, crippling situations. No, really small, really small. If we take, for example, the idea of, you bailing on a friend, you're cancelling social situations like that. If that's like a big situation, there's a gang of you, there's a group of you, you're going out for a meal, maybe a place to start is by exposing yourself to smaller groups in a setting that you feel comfortable, in a setting that you're familiar with food that you're familiar with. I know it sounds really basic, but the more you can kind of strip these things back and include the things that help you feel safe, slowly you can start gradually exposing yourself to more scary situations and you can pull yourself out of this cycle of avoiding anxiety and avoiding these triggers. The goal isn't to eliminate these fears, it's not to eliminate the anxiety, It's to build your confidence up while you're facing it. And naturally, what happens there is that anxiety reduces over time. Okay, so this leads us into mistake number 3. And this is going to probably come across quite controversial, but relying too much on coping mechanisms. And hear me out with this one. I am all for a coping mechanism, okay? I'm all for the things that help you in situations. The thing that I'm always looking out for as a therapist is whether these coping mechanisms are becoming compulsive or whether they're becoming safety behaviors. Basically, what I mean by that is whether you're becoming too reliant on these coping mechanisms. And I feel like it's worth giving a bit of an example here. So, journaling, for example, journaling is a really common coping mechanism that a lot of people have, that a lot of people like suggest, a lot of therapists suggest, and it's great. It can really help you get in touch with your feelings, your thoughts, that sort of thing. But if you start to feel like you can't cope without doing that, that's when these over reliance on coping mechanisms is maybe becoming a problem, because relying on them too much becomes another way to avoid the anxiety. I'm sure you can kind of see the theme that's going on here by now, but basically, these common mistakes are all the ways that you avoid having to sit and tolerate this anxiety, because you can sit with it. You can sit with these feelings without it becoming too overwhelming, without it becoming crippling, without it, sparking so much fear around what could happen. You can do that. It's just learning to do that. It's learning to be able to do that. And if you rely too much on these things, you never actually get to learn to do that. You never get to learn to be able to sit with these feelings. You're always looking for the ways to relieve it, the ways to avoid it, the ways to cope with it. Never actually just being able to let it be. Let it sit there, carry on your day while it's still there, while you're feeling it. And that's something that you can build up to. That is possible, but an over reliance on these things, these 3 mistakes, can really hold you back from being able to do that. I feel like this episode has become really serious and I never intended it to. So please don't come away from this thinking, holy shit, that's a lot. I'm doing all these things wrong. Like, honestly, don't. We all do these things. This is maybe just one of those moments where you become aware of doing these things. It doesn't mean you have to do anything about them now. It doesn't mean you have to all suddenly stop doing them. It's just becoming aware of it. I'm just simply pointing out that it might be happening. So, with the coping skills, with the tools, use them to help you calm down in the moment, but begin pairing them with the deeper work, like exploring your triggers, like slowly kind of facing some of these situations, practicing that non avoidance, challenging negative beliefs, building resilience, going to therapy. Pair it with some of that deeper work that's basically going to help you shift from avoidance to embracing, avoidance to accepting. As a therapist, I never advise suddenly stopping doing these things because that is too overwhelming. Because if you do that, essentially what you're going to do is be left with a bunch of feelings that you don't know how to cope with. And that's not going to help you. Don't get rid of these coping skills. Pair them alongside something else. Start doing some of the other work alongside it, the work that kind of helps you get in touch with these feelings, helps you tolerate them, helps you build that resilience, helps you understand them, helps you get to a bit more of that root issue of what's going on. Do that alongside the coping skills. And eventually, what starts to happen is these coping skills become redundant. You don't need them as much. They start to fade out with time. So, as we come to the end of this episode, let's do a little recap. 1, seeking reassurance. The more you can become aware of it, the more you can choose not to go down that path and you can slowly start being able to sit with those feelings. Secondly, Avoiding triggers in the short term will give you a feeling of relief, but gradually exposing yourself to these situations is the key to long term growth. And finally, coping skills, tools, mechanisms are helpful, but they are going to be more helpful and more beneficial in the long run if you are not using them as a way to avoid and you are using them alongside some of the deeper work of understanding what's actually going on for you. If any of these mistakes resonate for you, it is okay. If you're coming away from this episode thinking, holy shit, I'm doing all of them, I've just had a light bulb moment, you've got like that almost sinking feeling because you recognize that, yeah, you are doing these things in life. That is okay. I really want to stress the fact that that is okay. It is part of being human. Like I said to you earlier in this episode, I've done these things. I still catch myself doing these things. You know, it's not about completely stopping them. It's that progress over perfection. The more we can choose to not avoid, to not seek reassurance, the more we can step out of that short-term relief, longer-term impact cycle, the better that's going to be for us in the long run. So maybe in this episode, if you've noticed that you are doing all three of these things, start with one. Just take one of these and start by noticing where you might want to try and do something different, where you might want to not go down that route of avoidance. Just start in one of these small areas. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to change something too quickly, too fast. I would love to hear from you on this. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. I would love to hear which mistakes you find yourself making the most. Share your thoughts with me. You can share them on Instagram. My Instagram's at Therapy with Jess Eden, or you can share in the comments below. It might help other people to see that, yeah, they're not the only one struggling with this too, that they're not the only one being caught in these cycles, caught in these patterns. So please share, if you want to, the ones that you struggle with the most. I have absolutely loved having you here. I hope you have got something out of this episode, and I cannot wait to see you for next week's episode. New episodes released every Monday, but thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, follow whatever platform you're on. Please, please do all the things that help this episode reach more people, because if you've listened to this and come away thinking that was really great, that was helpful, I feel like I've learned something, I feel like I've got some practical things I can maybe start doing, then somebody else maybe needs that as well. And the more that you like, subscribe, share, follow, review these episodes, the more chance I have of reaching people who need it as well. So thank you. I would massively appreciate if you do that. And I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.